I'm here today in the Brighton TM Centre, TM, Transcendental Meditation. You know, in this building in Brighton and the one we had before, for the last 50 years, people have been coming here to learn Transcendental Meditation. I'm here with Rob Hamer, who's recently learnt TM. And Rob, I wanted to invite you here today. I want to hear your story, and I'd love this to be an interview between you and me, because we're old mates now. We've been checking in with each other, holding TM courses in Brighton for about a year now. So I'm really feel that your story, everyone has a story, but your story will help a lot of people. And that's why I've invited you here today. Your experiences right back to childhood, challenges in your childhood, your experiences with mental health, with addictions, but most importantly, when I was listening to something you were telling me the other day, is that your search for quiet, for quietude, and your struggle to try and find that. And it just shows that whatever our mental predisposition, there is something inside us that we are searching for, looking for, that may be very elusive. And so you have a story, and I'm really excited that you can be here today in the Brighton TM Centre. Let's go into it now. So Rob, say hello to everyone. Tell us about yourself, who you are, what you're doing. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, a little bit about me, and then first, and then second, I'll answer the question as to what brought me to the door. So I'm a musician, poet, writer, and actor. I'm not doing a lot of writing and acting at the moment because the whole focus for the last 2.5 years has been music, because I've been writing a song or a poem on average once every 2 weeks. And I actually plotted the course this morning. It's been a song or a poem on average once every 1.5 weeks.
Yes.
So the output has been phenomenal. So father of 3 wonderful daughters, have 3 amazing sons-in-law and 6 adorable grandchildren. So that's me in a nutshell.
I'm really glad that you've started by saying that you're an artist, a poet, because when I met you, something hit me that you're an amazingly creative person, but at the same time, the way that you said you have to work through that, you have challenges. And there are many people who want to create, who feel that they have the creative urge, but their brain works differently. Then we can't use the word normal, but you know what I mean?
Of course we can.
Yeah, you can. I remember you sent me a poem that I absolutely loved that actually turned into quite a popular song. It was called Noisy Soul. Do you remember that one?
Well, I wouldn't call it a popular song because it's going to be released on somebody else's album soon.
Right.
Damien Wilson, who's a rock singer and a friend of mine, but he wrote it. He recorded it for me. My producer said that's a lovely song, and I've got the right voice for it. And so, but I think you want to read it or something.
The reason I want to read it is that I think that this expresses for me your search for inner silence, your search for meditation. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just a couple of lines, if that's all right. It's called Noisy Soul, Robert Hamer. And I love the way you say noisy soul, hungry soul, frightened soul. And there's a bit that says, I try to fill my heart with empty things that tore my soul apart. That's so powerful. And then you say, but the silence I once feared now comforts me. I think that's so wonderful. For I have stilled and quietened my soul, and as a child content within its mother's arms, is my soul at rest in me. don't know where to go with that. I think, but since then, I've been a reader of your poetry.
That's not bad, actually.
It's not bad, is it? So what I want to explore with you over the next little while is about your search, your story.
Okay.
Because I think this is a story that people would love to hear.
Okay.
And also, I think that the moment that you came upon what we teach here, which is Transcendental Meditation, how did you find it? Why did you start? What happened? And is your poetry still as good now as it was then?
Well, I wouldn't like to be the judge of that. That's for other people to say. But I think the question that you're asking me is, what brought me here? And you've already drawn out in this interview this sometimes desperate search within me for inner peace, and inner silence was the two words you joined together, and inner silence. And my story goes back to when my mum was pregnant with me, because I was searching for inner silence even in the womb, because tragic as it was, when mum was pregnant with me, my mum and dad were told that my father was dying.
Oh.
And so I was born in the June, and my father kept a diary for that year. And in the March, my mum's nickname was Kitty, Catherine, and he just wrote two words on an entry in March: Kitty, hysterical. And it's well documented that if you play Mozart and Bach to a baby in a womb, its brain development will be a lot better. I'm an absolute fan of Led Zeppelin, and Led Zepp 2 is my favourite album of theirs, and I love Heartbreaker because it's so loud and chaotic. But I wouldn't want to play that to a pregnant girl, because although it's great music and they can go to Led Zepp concerts later, they really need to be listening to Mozart and Bach, because it's so organised. It brings this. So what I'm saying in a terribly long and rambling way is that this desire for peace. But Dad dies when I'm 17 months old, and the really sad thing is, and it's tragic, is that my mum became seriously mentally ill, was committed to a psychiatric unit when I was 9, was given electric shock treatment to her brain, a thing that they rarely do these days, and actually I think is outlawed in some countries, ECT. And mum, bless her, bless my mum, but she was hugely abusive in her chaos. She was hugely abusive to me and my late brother. It was physical, so there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of trauma. It was emotional, it was mental, it was spiritual. Stephen and I were led into a cult practice in our teens, taken up the road to see a white witch, taught a load of stuff that was in complete contradiction to what we were being taken to at church. And it's just, I grew up being terribly confused, and by the time 15, things are not normal. I've got, I've got a criminal record by the time I'm 15 for attempted car theft, although I didn't know how. I was just trying to run away from home. And I'm under a child psychiatrist for constant dreams about dying, which was all related to my father. So, it's this. I was pretty chaotic, but they recognised that I was a very good musician, and so they thought that they would put me in a place where I would be safe to do music. So they put me in the army and taught me how to kill people from 600 yards by the commandos in Plymouth when I was 16. And I served in Northern Ireland at the height of what was called the Troubles, only 10 days in 1975, but I could have been the subject of a sniper's bullet, as so many soldiers were, because we did the soldiering thing as well as the music. And so that was more trauma. And so I throughout the whole of my life I was searching for this inner peace, and I discovered something as a child. I was only age 10. Addictions fall into two categories. There's substance abuse, which is drugs and alcohol. When you say addicts, people think drugs and alcohol, but actually there are 4 behavioural addictions. Problem gambling. You don't put anything in your mouth, you don't shoot up, undereating, overeating, bulimia, food addictions, sex and love addiction. They're all behavioural addictions, but I discovered a process when I was age 10 that just calmed everything down. But it was the medicine that would poison me.
Of course.
And take away a 35-year marriage, destroy the relationship for a period with my daughter, because I was difficult to live with, because I was difficult to be around, very difficult to be around. So I tried religion. And I've got nothing against religion per se, but I went to church, I led Bible studies, went to Bible studies, helped to lead the worship, went on healing courses, and nothing worked. But a few years ago, I think it was back in 2017, I read a book by Russell Brand.
Oh yes, you told me, yeah.
Called Recovery from Other Addictions, and in it he talks about his step 11 in Alcoholics Anonymous, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God.
I like the title, Our Addictions, not my addictions, not your addictions.
Yeah, well, it kind of sort of implies that
yes,
all 8 billion of us on the planet have got some addictive process going on somewhere.
Yes.
But it's all on a continuum. I mean, somebody might have 1% worth of addictions. That could be Mother Teresa or the Pope. And then there are other people who are just have been much more crazy and up than me.
So what did you find in this book?
Well, Russell talks about his step 11, which is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, not somebody else's. Praying only for knowledge of his will for us, not somebody else, and the power to carry that out. And I thought to yourself, you know what? Mate, if it works for you, it's got to work for me. Because he was talking to me through my language, the language of recovery from addiction.
Right.
And I thought, all right, okay. So I went to see a guy called Charles Cunningham in Twickenham. Charles were lovely. And I convinced myself at the time that I couldn't afford to pay.
Now, you haven't mentioned so far what Russell Brand was recommending in this book.
He was recommending Transcendental Meditation.
That's it. Okay.
Sorry, I
you left that bit out.
I kind of sort of concluded. I thought that people would draw that conclusion, but thank you for drawing it out of me. No, he said I practice TM and it works, and so I went to see Charles, and then I convinced myself that I couldn't afford to pay, or somebody convinced me. Actually, is the truth. I received some bad advice, and they said you can't afford that at the moment, Robert. But actually, I couldn't have afforded not to have done it. But I picked up the book again 2 years ago, this November. I read it again, and I thought, I wonder if this will work. So I Googled Transcendental Meditation, London, saw that this lady, Anna, was doing a free talk. I thought, this is only going to cost me a couple of hours of my time, at worst. Right. And I went along, and I thought, this makes sense. This, what this lady is saying, it just adds up. And so I decided to go forward for the instruction. It's 1.5 hours per day over a period of 4 days. And Anna was very, not sceptical isn't the right word. She was very concerned about the fact that I've got a mental health diagnosis. So 10 years ago, to just spin the tape back slightly, excuse me, I was diagnosed with one mental health condition I won't go into now because it's too complicated and people have never heard of it. Bipolar type 2. And childhood trauma-induced PTSD. And I was diagnosed with those 3 things. I was diagnosed with major recurrent depression 10 years ago, and that morphed into bipolar 2 years ago.
Right.
It just changed in nature, and I became what's called a manic depressive. And so emotions all over the place, all over the shop. And so she was quite concerned about that, but I told her that there were 5 things that my psychiatrist had agreed that if I did these things on a regular basis, They calm me down.
Yes.
And the first one was football. I talk about it, I watch it, I still play it. Music, I write it, I record it, I gig it. I've got lots of friends who I love to hang around with, playing pool in the pub. I had a meditative practice at the time, which was Buddhism, but although it wasn't working for me properly, and being a member of a 12-step fellowship where my job is to help somebody else recover, because it's not all about me.
Right, yeah.
And he said, all right, Robert, he said, I'll sign you off without medication, but if you ever, he says, I can't see any evidence of psychosis, and you're not delusional. You know, you're not wandering around saying, oh, one day I'll be as handsome as Nigel.
Don't ever say that again.
Well, one day I'll be as handsome as Nigel. I just said it again. And, well, sorry about that. But anyway, I'm sure the audience will cope with it. But your fine looks, that is. And so, he said, Rob, you're not delusional, so I'm going to send you back to your doctor without being medicated. But if you ever show any signs of becoming psychotic or being delusional, we need to have a talk and put you on meds.
Right.
So Anna kind of thought, right, okay, Robert's really serious. He takes his mental health really seriously and will proceed. Yes. So she gave me the instruction.
In Transcendental Meditation.
In Transcendental Meditation.
Right.
And I set off practicing. And then one day, and you'll have to excuse me if I get emotional, but one day I'd been meditating and I looked at my watch and it was 17 minutes. And I knew that I had not been asleep. Because when you wake up, you know you've been asleep.
Absolutely, yes.
When you're asleep, you don't think, I'm sleeping. But when you wake up, you know you've been sleeping. Yeah. Well, I kind of woke up. I became, I guess, conscious, but I knew I hadn't been sleeping. And I immediately felt really emotional because I thought, my God, it's worked for me. Because when my psychiatrist diagnosed me with bipolar, he said, Robert, you have a mind that fires off in 1,000 different directions at once. He says, I can have a perfectly rational conversation with you, but you go all over the place. Right. You get off the point, you ramble. Right. And I thought...
You're doing okay, by the way.
Thank you. It was like, have you ever been to the doctor and, you've had an ear infection and they take one of those little things and they put it in your ear and they have a poke around and they shine a light? It's like he'd taken one of those and looked inside my head and thought, ow, that's a bit busy.
Right. That's a good analogy.
Yeah, it's a bit busy in there. And so for me to actually stop thinking about anything, I actually stopped thinking about football, which my mates think is a real problem. But I stopped thinking about anything. And then I had a vision.
And Rob, was this in the meditation that Anna taught you?
Well, no. It was several days later. As I said earlier, I'd been practicing. I'd done morning, evening, 20 minutes. And then one day, it happened.
Yes.
And I had a vision. And I saw a little girl kneeling on the floor in front of me. I can see it now. She was turned to the side. She got blonde hair and a purple and sparkly dress. And I burst into tears because I thought, I didn't realise actually that it was, I've got 4 granddaughters, but it was one of my granddaughters that I was actually seeing that had come to my consciousness. But I'd never seen the dress before. And I saw the dress a few weeks later and I said to Ellie, that's the name of my youngest daughter. I said, there's purple and sparkling dress. She said, yeah, Dad. But I'd never seen it before. But I saw it in the meditation, which is really weird. Please don't ask me how these things work. There's something bigger going on than both of us here, as there always is underneath it all, the thing that's true. But it was... And so... I'm not going to make myself out to be perfect because I don't want anybody watching or listening to this interview to think, oh, Rob's got it sorted. I have not. I'll never have it sorted. You could say to me, Robert, and, is your practice regular? No, it's not.
Yeah, because we do advise that.
Absolutely.
Twice a day,
and
20 minutes.
And a friend of mine who's here present said to me when we had a coffee in London, one day, he says to his students, practice for 20 minutes. And if you can't practice for 20 minutes, practice for 15 minutes. And if you can't practice for 15 minutes, practice for 15 minutes.
Right.
I love it.
Yes.
I've never forgotten it. And so, but what I do know, and I'll finish my kind of long answer to your question, what brought you here? I know that for me this works. I know that in the chaos of life, metaphorically speaking, I can walk into a room and it will go quiet. You have no idea what that means to a man like me. I have this really creative mind.
Yeah.
And which God has given me, the God of my understanding. But it gets a bit busy when you're a musician, poet, writer and actor. It gets busy up here.
Right.
And it gets even busier on a Saturday afternoon when I'm looking at the football results and not feeling very happy about some of them. But I have this ability, or something, Transcendental Meditation gives me this ability for me to go into that quiet room and shut the door. And I'll finish by saying one thing and then I'm done. I have a mind that's like a box of frogs.
Box of
frogs.
Frogs. Okay.
And they're jumping up and down.
Right.
All the time.
Yes.
And when I do meditation, they go for a sleep in the corner.
Ah, right.
These guys are fine over here. They might start jumping about later in the day.
Right.
And give me grief.
Yes.
Trying to get my attention. But actually, when I meditate, these guys, and girls, let's not be sexist about this, female frogs as well, they just go to sleep in the corner.
Right.
And that's what I'd love everybody to experience.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're listening to this interview between Nigel and me today and you've got a mind that's like a box of frogs, well, come on in, the water's fine.
Rob, we were chatting on the phone the other day and you were saying, you've got to go because someone's invited you to do a creation, do a poem or a song with regard to war. And you were telling me you have to go quickly. And you said to me you had this inspiration that one of the Roman senators or something said, we make a desert or we create a desert and we call it peace. But I don't know what happened next.
Oh, right, okay.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you,
okay,
how did that, because I know you probably did a transcendental meditation on your way there, and then you recorded something. I'd love to hear, this is a spontaneous question, you weren't ready for it, but how did that work?
Well, it works really well because I have a music manager and I've been writing songs on a particular theme all year, but the appeal of that particular theme is fairly narrow in the number of people who'd like to. So she said, Rob, I'd like you to write a song that would have a much wider appeal, that people would be able to. And I thought to myself, war, because we've got this awful situation that's going on between the people of Israel and and the Palestinians. And I don't want to get into all of that now, but there's this terrible situation that's going on. And we've got this awful situation going on between Russia and the Ukraine. And I remembered a quote from a Roman senator, to ravage, to slaughter, to usurp under false titles. They call it empire, and when they make a desert, they call it peace. And that was Gaius Cornelius Tacitus, born somewhere between 56 BC and 117 AD, and he was a Roman orator, lawyer and senator. And Lord Byron wrote, "Mark where his carnage and conquest cease, he makes a solitude and calls it peace." And so I wrote this song. I was actually on the way to the recording studio, and my session guitarist is actually doing the lead guitar, but Here's For What It's Worth is a bit of my creativity. They make a desert, but they call it peace. From their hatred and their conquests arise wars that never cease. The hopes and dreams of children are lost beneath the waves. War kills the innocent and puts them in their graves. On every side of conflict, there are people to blame. Everyone points the finger, but is there any gain in insisting we are right when we might be partly to blame? Why is it for millennia, the song remains the same? We sing the songs of bigotry, of prejudice and of hate. We cling to beliefs that don't serve us. But I'm asking, is it too late? Too late to lay down our weapons from the nuclear bomb to the lance? Why can't we sing what John sang and give peace a chance? A question that's worth asking is, why was it always men that started the wars and religion since way back when to when we walked the earth in the times of Cain and Abel? But only women saw that war is wasteful. So let's share our food and gather round the table. Let's write a different story where Cain doesn't murder Abel. Let's leave behind a world where we are hostages to pain. Why can't we forgive what's past and have a better life to gain?
That's beautiful. Rob, that's so... fills us all. I hope that we're going to get that in this interview. I'd love everyone to hear that, because for me, this is what's kept me going, teaching Transcendental Meditation for 42 years, is because...
to hear this poem?
Yes. And what it means, what that poem means, has kept me going, because when I finish teaching, someone walks home, they've got the mantra, they've got the meditation, they're starting to meditate. I think, there goes someone for world peace.
And there goes someone for world peace, because I can't remember who, I think it was Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see. So if we have come to a place of internal peace within ourselves, we can then take that into the world. But I can't get peace by Leeds United getting promotion this season to the Premier League and for them eventually becoming a top 4 club and maybe winning the Champions League one day. That's going to give me a great deal of happiness, but it's not going to give me peace. And even playing rock music won't give me peace. I'm looking for something inside, because that is a poem about war. And everyone pointing the finger, and I point the finger at myself. Rob, you're such an idiot. Why do you say these things? Sometimes you're really crazy. But I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this peace. I just want to gather around the table myself and share. Yeah. So there we are. I'm starting to ramble, and that's never a good idea, Nigel.
But the peace is always there beneath us. Beneath the waves, the peace can be found. And that's why I started by asking you, in your search for quiet.
Search for quiet.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that Anna Kreese, one of the images that really stayed in my mind was that she said, if you think about the sea, storms take place on the surface. And it can get pretty wild, and sometimes it's really nice and calm, and we like those bits. But down at the bottom of the ocean, there are no storms. It's a bit dark, and there are some weird-looking things down there, but there are no storms at the bottom of the ocean. And what Transcendental Meditation enables me to do, it enables me to go down to the bottom of the ocean and sit there for 20 minutes, not even holding my breath. And then when it's time, I decompress and I come back up to the surface. And the storm might still be going on, but for 20 minutes in my life, I've had this complete peace. And that's actually come from within. It's not come from even listening to music or something like that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Rob, I must say that you know I'm a teacher of Transcendental Meditation. I've been teaching TM for about 40 years, and often people come up to me and say, Nigel, we loved your introductory talk, which is the same one that Anna gives, you know. He says, but I love everything you say about this Transcendental Meditation, but I've got to tell you, it won't work for me. And I say, why not? And they say, because my mind never stops. So I think hearing from you, this is why I wanted you to come on to this interview today. I think that when people say to me, my mind never stops, they've got to hear your experience. So thank you for that explanation of not only the frogs, but also it's like coming into a room and the room is quiet.
Well, just to drive home the point, I'm in 3 12-step fellowships for 3 different addictions, behavioural, and I have an official diagnosis of 3, NHS diagnosis of 3 mental health conditions. So that's 6 things that I'm dealing with on a daily basis, and yet, despite these 6 things, and my psychiatrist saying you have a mind that fires off in 1,000 different directions at once, and me having a mind like a box of frogs, TM is that door that leads to the quiet room in the middle of the chaos.
I love that. In the middle of the chaos.
The quiet room.
I remember there's an ancient saying that meditation, natural meditation, will lead to serenity in the midst of chaos.
I think that's it, right there.
One thing that's really important to me is that meditation is not just about sitting in meditation, but it's about what it can do for us in our life during the day, once we finish the meditation. So I really want to ask you about, Rob, what is your experience once you've finished a 20-minute meditation with TM? How does that change your day? What happens in the day? Does it come with you?
It does go with me. So let's take this to the physical realm. So if I get up and I think I'm too busy to eat, or I'm in a rush and I don't have breakfast, about 11 a.m. I'm going to start to suffer because, my blood sugar, there's probably doctors and nurses watching this thing, and, so we don't feel great. And it's like having a spiritual food at the beginning of the day. And I really suffered the other day because I was doing something which I knew was going to be difficult. I was meeting a friend who was going to be helping me with something that was going to be really challenging. And I thought in the morning that I was too busy because I had too many other things to do before I rushed off to see this person. And I knew when I was travelling to meet up with my friend that I wasn't feeling well. And I don't mean physically well, I just wasn't feeling well in my head. And I did say to her, I said, I should have done my present meditation before I left the house this morning, and I'm not feeling great. And, we did have a good day and we got through the challenging time, but I absolutely know for certain that if I'd have taken the time in the morning, I could have gotten a later train. I could have texted her and said, hey, I'm going to be half an hour late because I've done my meditation this morning. She would have understood. So it goes with me. But the other thing is, and somebody asked this question the other day in a TM course that I was in, George, just a TM meeting, about, are we allowed to meditate at other times in the day? Well, for sure we are. Because you get on a crowded London tube train and it's chaos. And the lights are bright and there's, it's just like, maybe you get on a London tube and a football, match has ended and everybody's getting on the train. You can just sit there and, just like do the mantra. And I now want to talk about what I call the C principle. Not C as in the seaside at Brighton.
S.
S-double-E.
S-double-E, yes.
So if people only remember one thing from this interview, just remember the word C, S-double-E. S. Transcendental meditation is simple. I'm an addict. I've got an overactive mind. I'll complicate anything. Robert, 2 + 2 equals 4. Well, no, hang on a minute. But if you want to get to 4, you could do it 3 + 1, or you could do 1 + 3. And if you add 3 to 4, that makes 7. And if you divide that by 2, that's 3.5. And no, Rob, just can we just steady on? Can you just accept that 2 + 2 equals 4? Oh, all right then. It's really simple because I can't complicate a one-word mantra. I've got a PhD from Oxford University in complicating things.
Complicating things, yes.
Yeah. I've got 10 O levels, 5 A levels, a master's, a degree, a master's, and a PhD in complicating things. And no, I can't complicate. Sorry, I can't. I just can't complicate a one-word mantra. It's just like can't be done.
It's simple.
It's so simple. TM is easy. This is one of the things that I love about it so much, because I don't have to sit in a certain position. I don't even have to lie in a certain position. And this is what I find most beautiful about it. If I go to sleep, someone's not going to nudge me and make me stay awake, because I'm told in TM that if you fall asleep whilst you're doing your meditation, it's what your psyche is telling you need. This is like a loving mother with a distressed child is just calming them down.
Some people say it's very forgiving. It's a forgiving meditation.
It's totally forgiving. It's totally accepting. And so it's very easy. I can't get Transcendental Meditation wrong.
Yes.
Oh, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
I can't get it wrong. 2 + 2 = 4. Because it's simple and because it's easy, it's effective. That's why that's why it works for me. Because I don't have to complicate anything. Well, I can't complicate it. It's really easy. Come on in, the water's fine. And because it's simple and easy, it's effective. Just people, remember the word C, S-E-E. That's all you need to know about Transcendental Meditation.
But people sometimes say to me, how can I get better at meditating? And I say, you're already practicing it correctly. But where the growth, where the evolution of our practice as meditators lies, is how we feel in our life.
Okay.
So I want to ask you, Rob, how do you feel in your life? You're laughing at me, aren't you?
Well, it's just that you mentioned the word human being. You mentioned the word evolution, which might imply I might become a human being one day. Because I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, he's a Man United fan, and keep the camera rolling because this is funny.
Okay.
And I said to Hugh, yeah, but I'm only human. He said, no, Rob, you're a Leeds fan. So you don't qualify for that status. So anyway, I might evolve one day and TM could help me do this. Carry on.
Very good, very good. I want
a cup of tea.
I've got a cup of tea here. I would like to keep on with this inquiry, because you have, I believe, an inquiring mind.
Very.
Very inquiring mind. What do you feel coming from someone with addictions, someone with a complicate everything, your experience of life, not in the meditation, but outside of the meditation, while you're creating music, while you're creating poetry,
while I'm acting,
while you're acting, is there a flow from the meditation into the creative realms of your life?
Well, I mean, you and I both know why you're asking me this question in particular, because I get invited, from Bournemouth and from Glasgow to join us for tonight's online meditation. And, I joined a meditation with some of these fellows a few weeks ago, and suddenly this poem started to come to me. So, I thought, oh dear, the received wisdom is don't keep a notepad, don't take notes. But I thought, but the poem might not be there when I come out of the 20-minute meditation, which was a real worry to me. So I just switched my camera off, stepped out of the meeting, but kept in the Zoom. And then I wrote the poem. And then when the Zoom call finished, they said, how was it? And I said, well, actually, I stepped away. I was honest. I said, I wrote a poem, and they were a bit concerned about that. And the general feedback was, oh, you shouldn't have done that. But then I rang you as my mentor, and I told you what had happened, and you told me this wonderful story, which I'll allow you to tell about somebody who's quite well known.
Right. I remember that call. I really appreciated that you called me because you were worried, because you were right in the middle of a meditation and you had an amazingly inspiring thought.
Yeah.
And usually as a teacher of TM, I would say, just come back to the mantra. Just come back to the meditation. And if you remember the inspiring thought, weigh it up in the light of common sense afterwards. But what you did is you quietly came out of meditation, you got a piece of paper and you wrote it down.
It's just this thing again about transcendental meditation being easy and you can't get it clang wrong. And I'm just really glad that I had the sense to phone you and say, because my question to you was, did I do it wrong? And you said, no, Robin, you told me the story. And it was just, I remember I cried at the time because I get quite emotional quite quickly. But it was just such a relief to be told that actually I was just doing the right thing instinctively, which doesn't often happen with me, but carry on.
That's the thing, we can practice transcendental meditation, but we don't have to be deadly serious about it. You know what I mean?
Please don't.
Please be happy. Enjoy your life. Just add 20 minutes meditation.
Well, that brings me to another thing, which we haven't discussed so far, but I think I have shared this before, is that I have this very, very strange phenomena that quite often, especially in the early days, it hasn't happened so much recently, but when I'm meditating, I'll start to think funny things. I start to, I think about my mates, and there are times in meditation where I've actually cracked out laughing. And I thought there is this sense of, I think I did speak to you about it, because the Maharishi, if you look at the videos on YouTube, he was always laughing when he was teaching.
Yes, he's always laughing.
They called him the laughing teacher, or the laughing something, the laughing guru.
Right.
That was it. That was one of his nicknames, the laughing guru. And I think the God of my understanding, whatever it is that, put the universe together, if there is such a thing, I do believe that this thing wants me to be happy, joyous and free.
Yes.
I think it just wants me to be happy. I don't think it wants me to be sad. I grew up understandably as a child and as a teenager as a very sad little boy, and I was very, very angry. I should have been expelled from school for being violent with one of the teachers. And you know what? The head teacher, I met him in the road with my kids about 20 years later, and I said, Mr. Stott, why didn't you have me expelled? And he just said to me, Robert, he said, your mum used to come down to the school and tell me what was going on at home. He said, I was never going to kick you out.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I worshipped him because I just instinctively knew that this beautiful man had got my back. But I could have been kicked out. Probably should have been.
Yeah, all these experiences can be an overload. I actually define stress as simply an overload.
Yeah.
Too much going on.
I was overloaded.
Overloaded.
I was overloaded when I turned up at school.
Yeah.
I was always overloaded. I was overloaded until the 1st of December 2 years ago until I walked into that room.
And Anna Kreese whispered to you how to meditate.
Well, she didn't whisper to me, but that would have been a bit strange. But, she just told me about something for free, and then I thought, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it. And it was a life-changing moment. Life-changing.
Many people come like you to relieve anxiety, relieve
Doesn't
stress.
Surprise me. We live in an anxious world.
What people don't think of straight away is, well, if my anxiety is to go, what's going to replace it? And that is, of course, joy. What your experience of laughing in meditation is the joy that comes out.
It's a word that we don't often use in society much these days, the word joy. People think, because I think happiness and joy are two different things. They sound very similar, but I think joy is just something that So many external things can make us happy, but joy is something that comes from within.
Yes. I like to call it happiness without reason. Nothing.
I've never heard that expression before. I think that's the title of a song right there.
There,
Happiness. That's the next song. Happiness without
Send
reason.
me the song tomorrow.
Happiness without reason. Now is the time and a season.
Now's the time. You see, this is your creative impulse.
Happiness without reason. Now is the time. Now is the season to find the peace that we were always looking for.
I think today's...
Well, I think if I carry on with this poem, it'll become a terrible bore.
Rob, I wanted to thank you for sharing your story today.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
And I think there are so many people. I've taught lots of people. I teach every week. Every time I teach someone meditation, it's always different. Everyone comes with their own story, their own beliefs, their own stress.
Yeah.
And somehow, this marvellous thing in the human being, and I do consider you a human being, Rob.
Thank you, Nigel.
Despite the football team.
Yeah.
There's something inside us that this technique, it just works.
It works. If somebody said to me, and I guess we're coming to the end of this interview now, Rob, tell me about Transcendental Meditation, I would just give them a 2-word answer. It works.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rob. And by the way, I discovered very recently that we share the same birthday.
We do, don't we? The 25th of June.
That's right.
The 25th of June.
Yes.
And I've always loved being born on the 25th of June because it's exactly 6 months away from Christmas.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, so
Halfway
that's
station.
great, and it's only 1 minute away in southern England, away from the longest day. So sun rises at 4:44 on the 21st of June on the 25th, and sunset is just a minute later. So it's just a long summer day, which we're actually enjoying here in Brighton. And so it's so in the two Ronnies, it's goodbye from me, and it's
Goodbye from him.
Goodbye from him.
Right.